On Sunday, from this exact spot, I'll be running this year's Robin Hood half marathon. It's the 40th occasion it's been staged. Unfortunately, in 2020, those celebrations were put on hold, but it's back this year from the Victoria Embankment here in Nottingham. Today, I'm going to walk the route, use it as a Wednesday walkout, hopefully use it as a preview to show you where to go, what it's all about, and I'll offer a few tips from the experience I've taken from doing it. I've now done it 4 times. I'm an ambassador for the race, so it's something really close to my heart. Having run the first mile, my first tip when taking part in the Robin Hood half marathon is not to set off too quickly. The spectators along firstly the embankment and then along London Road give you a real buzz, lots of them, quite deep, and it's easy to get carried away and set off far too fast. There is hills to come, which will become apparent, so it's important to go off at a really realistic pace. You know, keep an eye on the watch, make sure you're at the pace you want to be so you don't burn out too soon. Having reached the top of Castle Road, just in front of the castle gates back there, you'll realise that's one of the steepest parts of the course. Short, but steep. But once again, the crowds will really get you through. Right in the heart of Nottingham city centre now, we're about to enter into the Park Estate. A really, really nice place to run, really picturesque, leafy. You can see the old telephone box there. But possibly the toughest part of the course. Most undulating, up and down. A place where lots of people, when training, tend to get lost. And my next bit of advice for anyone who's local especially is to run this part of the course if they possibly can beforehand. Anybody who I work with, I get them to come up here, follow the route through, just so there's no real surprises on the day. It's not as bad as people make out. Like I say, it's a really nice run in reality, but people do worry about it. It's about a mile from these gates to the gates up on Derby Road. So it's not too long, but it's worth bearing in mind that it is undulating, but if you know what you're expecting, you know, there's no real big surprises on the day. Anyone that's ever ran knows the first 2-3 miles are always painful. They're always a bit of a lie. You never get a true reflection on how we're going to feel throughout the run, and that's definitely the case here in Nottingham. Those hills in the park are tough, but having just left and facing the prospect of the first real descent down Derby Road, it's important just to maintain that steady pace. Of course there'll be points where you can kick in, but on Derby Road is the first water station. So it's important to not lose too much momentum by really kicking on and kicking in with some pace. You know, my advice would be just to maintain it, get your breath back, plod along steadily until after the water station, which is approaching 4 miles, and then from there there's a chance to really open up and see what we can do. Crown Island is one of Nottingham's busiest roads. Every time I reach it, I feel like it's a real significant point in the Robin Hood Half Marathon. As you've seen there, it's 5 miles in, and I feel if I'm having a good race, it's when I start to realise if I'm having a bad one, the same again. But having been through the water station on Derby Road, hit Triumph Road and the flat ground running through the university buildings, you know, it's a chance to really start to settle in. After this, you start to climb ever so slightly up to Woollerton Park and halfway. But like I say, that feels like a really significant point where it kind of tells me a lot about how I'm going to perform and get through the second half. Passing by that water station, you hit what I believe is the most iconic part of the Robin Hood Half Marathon. Batman's Place, behind me, otherwise known as Woollerton Hall, is exactly halfway on the route. This ascent is the last significant climb. What I will say on the day is there'll be plenty of spectators cheering you on, they'll get you to the top, and then there's a steady decline down back towards Crown Island, but then on towards Nottingham city centre and down to the embankment. It's all about the finish line from here, the second half. Hopefully you'll be feeling really strong, having conserved some energy and able to push on throughout the rest of the race. The grounds of Woollerton Park, you follow the amazingly tree-lined lime tree avenue. Absolutely beautiful and amazing place to run, and it feels like you're really getting into the second half. As the sun's out today, I can't help but notice all the amazing colours. The greens, the browns, tell you that autumn is on its way. Of course, we're deep into late summer. And with the race taking place at the end of September, it leads me nicely into my next tip. One thing I've noticed in previous years is not always dressed accordingly for the run itself. It can be very cool, chilly even in the morning, you know, and of course with a 9:30 start we might put on a few too many layers. We might be stood waiting, worrying that we're going to be too cold. But I'll just sort of point you in the direction of the weather forecast. The weather at this time of year can get really warm really quick, you know, and this week in particular it's quite warm, so it's just worth checking the forecast, bearing in mind what you might need. I've wore too much in previous years, got too hot as I got deep into the race, overheated a little bit, but I've also not quite wore enough, because that chilliness can continue into the morning and it can be wet and damp come the end of the race. So it's just worth checking that forecast. And all of a sudden we find ourselves back on Derby Road. Here at 4 miles, those last few are about the double back, passing through Crown Island in the opposite direction, along Ilkeston Road, back through the university buildings. You find yourself here. It's absolutely fantastic if you've got friends doing the race, people taking part at different paces. I've high-fived lots of people as I've been getting tired, you know, and it just gives you that little bit of a spark. There's a tricky little double back just behind me up towards the QMC, but I'm stood almost exactly where the penultimate water station is. This is when you're getting deep into the race. It's important to take those fluids on board, particularly if it's warm. You know, as I mentioned, it does get warmer throughout the morning sometimes, so please bear that in mind. There's only one more water station after this. Apologies for the true Nottinghamism, but Abbey Bleddy Bridge. The reason I told you to take it easy on those ascents through the park and on the descent down Derby Road was because during my first Robin Hood half marathon, I got to this point and completely hit the wall. Whilst I was going along at a good time, I'd put a lot of effort in at the start. It took so much out of me. Still managed a pretty decent time, especially for my first half marathon, but it was at this point where I felt it all sort of go away from me. I ended up walking a little and I regretted how much I put in. I've learned over the last few years to take my time through that first 5k, and in the last 5k, the 10-mile markers just over the other side of the bridge, you'll just have that little bit extra to push on through to the end. I will say, when you do come over Abbey Bridge, it almost feels like the home straight. All roads lead back to the embankment. Come past Nottingham Castle. Remember Castle Road and how steep that was? Thankfully we don't have to do that again. At this point there's usually really deep crowds. Lots of noise, lots of encouragement. You will be feeling tired, especially if you've done a quick one, but the crowds will get you through those extra few hundred yards and start pushing you right on towards the end. A final small tip when taking part in the Robin Hood Half Marathon is, having passed through those gates back onto the Victoria Embankment, the temptation can be to go for it, to really put your foot down and attack a sprint finish. The reality is it's still about half a mile to the end. So what I'd say is don't go too soon. The crowds will be encouraging again and really deep along here, really willing you home. They'll give you something, they'll get you going, but the reality is it's still quite a long way. When you get to the suspension bridge, which you'll see shortly, that's when it's time to go. Give it that sprint finish, give it your all, and finish in style. So that's it guys, my walkthrough preview of the Robin Hood Half Marathon. Thankfully they've started putting the fences in place, so I knew exactly where to finish. Not that I didn't anyway, but it definitely helped. Hope the videos help you, give you an idea of what the race is all about. If you've got any questions about what I've said about the race itself, please post them on the comments. Look forward to answering those during tomorrow's Thursday Thoughts live session, in which I'll be speaking more about the Robin Hood Half Marathon. If you've liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please share with anybody who's taking part, who you think might be interested. All I'm trying to do is pass on a little bit of experience and knowledge to accompany all those things we do for every run, for every race. Of course, hydrate properly. If you can eat and sleep well the day before, that's always ideal. Make sure you know exactly what you're doing on the day. But for me, this race is all about pacing properly. I touched on many times the hilly start, so if you settle down early, get a nice rhythm going, later in the race it might all come back to you, and you never know, you might just get a PB. Whatever the result, good luck, have a great run, really make the most of it. As with any half marathon, it's about taking in the occasion, taking in the crowds, taking in all that amazing spirit. We've gone long enough now without mass participation events. Don't take them for granted, you never know what's going to happen next. But if you're not taking part, please get down anywhere along the route. I've pinpointed places where you see lots of spectators and spectators congregate to cheer on family and friends. believe me, it's definitely appreciated by us guys that run. It really does the trick in getting us over that finish line. It's never easy, I always say that. So like I say, do join us if you can. Further to that, join me on DOdaily for that questions and answers session tomorrow. If you've got anything outside the race as well, please pop on your questions in the comments, and of course answer that throwback question: what are your goals for the final quarter of 2021? Mine is to make the most of a couple of half marathons later in the year. This weekend I'm going to be pacing some friends. I'll be doing a vlog, so do check that out on next week's Wednesday workout. I'll show you how we got on and how much fun I had doing this year's Robin Hood half marathon. Until tomorrow guys, just doing it.